The leader who chose people over glory, Shackleton's story. In a world that celebrates victory, Sir Ernest Shackleton stands as a powerful contradiction. He never reached the South Pole, and never completed his grand transcontinental expedition. By the harsh standards of exploration, he failed, again and again. Yet, more than a century later, he is remembered as one of the greatest leaders in human history. The reason lies in a paradox. The same man who led 28 men out of the frozen abyss was also the man who led them into it. And that is exactly why his leadership matters. The risk that created the crisis. Shackleton was driven by a restless hunger for the unknown. But he was not a cautious planner. He was bold, impulsive, and deeply optimistic, sometimes dangerously so. In 1914, he set out to achieve what no one had done before: cross Antarctica from one side to the other. But ambition pushed him into risk. He sailed into the Weddell Sea late in the season, forcing his ship, Endurance, into dense pack ice that experienced sailors knew was unpredictable. Slowly, the ice tightened its grip. The ship stopped. Then it was trapped. Then, under crushing pressure, it broke apart. On November 21, 1915, the Endurance sank, leaving 28 men stranded in isolation, with no rescue coming. Shackleton's greatest strength, his optimism, had led them into disaster. Now it would be tested in a different way. Leadership through letting go. Most leaders fail because they cannot let go of their original goal. Shackleton did the opposite. The moment the ship was lost, he made a decision that changed everything. The mission was over. There was no hesitation, no denial, no attachment to the dream of crossing Antarctica. He immediately redefined success. Not exploration, not glory, survival. This ability, what we now call goal fluidity, is the foundation of his leadership. While others clung to purpose, Shackleton adapted to reality. The invisible war, engineering morale. In Antarctica, survival is not just physical, it is psychological. Shackleton understood that the greatest threat was not the cold, but despair. So he did something unusual. He didn't just encourage morale, he engineered it. He created structure in chaos through routine. Every day had order, fixed times for waking, eating, and working. He ensured that every man had a role, so no one felt useless. Scientists, sailors, and officers all shared the same labor, breaking down rigid class divisions that often destroyed other expeditions. And when tensions emerged, he acted with precision. He kept difficult personalities, like the carpenter McNish, close to him, managing conflict before it could spread. This was not accidental leadership. It was deliberate design. The loneliest role on the ice. Each night, Shackleton walked from tent to tent. He listened. He reassured. He watched carefully for signs of fear. But there was one thing he never revealed: his own. Internally, he carried the full emotional weight of the expedition: anxiety, exhaustion, and constant pressure. Yet he never allowed doubt to show. Because in that environment, the leader could not break. He became something more than a commander. He became a shield, absorbing fear so that others could endure. The voyage of madness. After months drifting on ice, the men reached Elephant Island. But they were not saved. They were isolated, exposed, and slowly weakening. The greatest danger was no longer just freezing temperatures, but constant wetness. Sea spray soaked their clothes. Freezing winds cut through damp fabric. Nothing ever dried. It was not sudden death. It was slow. Shackleton knew they could not survive long. So he made a decision that defined his leadership. He would leave most of his men behind, in order to save them. With 5 others, he sailed 800 miles across the most dangerous ocean on Earth in a 20-foot lifeboat. It was not courage alone. It was calculation. Staying meant certain death. Leaving meant a chance. So he chose the chance. After 15 brutal days at sea, they reached South Georgia Island. Then Shackleton and 2 companions crossed unmapped mountains for 36 hours, without rest to reach help. The anatomy of a successful failure. When Shackleton finally returned to Elephant Island nearly 2 years later, he delivered 4 simple words. All safe, all well. Not one man had been lost. This outcome was not luck. It was the result of a series of leadership decisions made under extreme pressure. He succeeded because he abandoned the mission the moment it became dangerous, refusing to fall into the trap of sunk costs. Where others might have pushed forward for the sake of achievement, Shackleton chose survival without hesitation. He understood that morale was as critical as food or shelter. By building routines, enforcing shared hardship, and carefully managing personalities within the group, he created a culture that could endure even in despair. He took risks, but never blindly. The journey of the James Caird was not reckless bravery, but a calculated gamble, chosen because it offered the only realistic path to survival. And above all, he carried the emotional burden of leadership alone. While his men were allowed to feel fear, he was not. He projected calm, absorbed tension, and became the psychological anchor of the entire group. This is what transformed failure into success. The paradox that endures. Shackleton's legacy is not simple. He was bold, but sometimes reckless. Visionary, but flawed. The architect of both the disaster and the survival. And that is what makes his story powerful. Because it reveals a truth many leaders try to avoid. Leadership is not about avoiding mistakes. It is about what you do after them. Shackleton did not conquer Antarctica. But in the moment that mattered most, he made a different choice. He chose his men, over glory, over pride, over everything. And that is why we still remember him.
It's time to study new words in context. 1. Contradiction. Definition: a situation where two ideas or facts are opposite or do not match each other. Example: it is a contradiction that he says he is calm, but he is shouting. 2. Expedition. Definition: a long and organized journey, usually for a special purpose like research or exploration. Example: the team went on an expedition to explore Antarctica. 3. Abyss. Definition: a very deep place, often used to describe something dangerous or unknown. Example: the ship disappeared into the dark abyss of the ocean. 4. Impulsive. Definition: acting quickly without thinking carefully. Example: he made an impulsive decision and later regretted it. 5. Fluidity. Definition: the ability to change easily and quickly. Example: good leaders show fluidity when situations suddenly change. 6. Anatomy. Definition: the structure or main parts of something. Example: the teacher explained the anatomy of a successful plan. 7. The trap of sunk costs. Definition: a situation where people keep doing something just because they already spent time or money on it, even if it is not a good idea. Example: he stayed in the failing project because of the trap of sunk costs. 8. Paradox. Definition: a situation that seems strange or impossible, but is actually true. Example: it is a paradox that failure helped him become successful.
Comprehension questions. 1. Why is Shackleton described as a contradiction? Answer: because he failed to complete his mission and never reached the South Pole. Yet he is remembered as one of the greatest leaders in history for saving all 28 of his men. 2. What was Shackleton's main goal in the 1914 expedition? Answer: his goal was to cross Antarctica from one side of the continent to the other. 3. What mistake led to the expedition's disaster? Answer: he sailed into the Weddell Sea late in the season and pushed into dangerous pack ice, which trapped and eventually crushed the ship. 4. What happened to the ship Endurance? Answer: it became trapped in ice, was crushed by pressure, and sank on November 21, 1915. 5. What was Shackleton's most important decision after the ship sank? Answer: he immediately abandoned the mission and shifted the goal from exploration to survival. 6. What is goal fluidity, and how did Shackleton demonstrate it? Answer: goal fluidity is the ability to change objectives when circumstances change. Shackleton showed this by giving up the expedition goal and focusing entirely on keeping his men alive. 7. Why does the article call morale the invisible war? Answer: because despair, fear, and hopelessness could destroy the team mentally, even if they survived physically. 8. How did Shackleton maintain morale among his men? Answer: he created routines, gave everyone a role, encouraged social activities, and ensured equality among the crew. 9. Why did Shackleton keep difficult personalities close to him? Answer: to control potential conflict and prevent negativity from spreading throughout the group. 10. What was the loneliest role Shackleton had to take on? Answer: he had to hide his own fear and carry the emotional burden alone, while projecting calm for his men. 11. Why was life on Elephant Island especially dangerous? Answer: because the men were constantly wet from sea spray and freezing winds, which made hypothermia more likely than just cold temperatures alone. 12. What was the purpose of the James Caird journey? Answer: to sail 800 miles to South Georgia Island, to get help and rescue the rest of the crew. 13. Why is the James Caird journey described as a calculated gamble? Answer: because staying meant certain death, while leaving offered a small but real chance of survival. 14. How does Shackleton's leadership differ from Robert Falcon Scott's? Answer: Scott focused on achieving the mission and lost his men, while Shackleton prioritized survival and saved all of his crew. 15. What is the main lesson about leadership from Shackleton's story? Answer: leadership is not about avoiding mistakes, but about making the right decisions after failure, especially choosing people over pride or glory.